When Eva Martinez escapes to the Eden Wellness Retreat, she expects yoga, meditation, and healing from her latest heartbreak. What she doesn't expect is Apple Chen, the retreat's sensual chef whose touch ignites fires in places Eva forgot existed. Or Seraphina Viper, the mysterious guest whose midnight visits leave Apple breathless and Eva burning with jealousy. 3 women, 1 secluded paradise, and enough sexual tension to make the earth move. In this garden, every bite is sinful, every touch is electric, and falling in love might just be the most dangerous temptation of all. The Eden Wellness Retreat promised transformation through natural connection, but nothing in their brochure prepared me for Apple Chen. I'd driven 6 hours into the California mountains, fleeing the wreckage of my relationship with Miranda, a successful attorney who'd decided she needed someone more traditionally feminine after 3 years together. The retreat seemed perfect, a month of digital detox, organic living, and supposedly finding my inner goddess. Apple emerged from the kitchen garden as I parked, and I immediately understood why they called this place Eden. She moved like liquid silk, her sundress clinging to curves that made my mouth water. Her long black hair caught the afternoon light, and when she smiled, I felt something inside me that had been dormant since Miranda left suddenly roar to life. "You must be Eva," she said, approaching with a basket of vegetables that looked like they'd been painted by an artist. "I'm Apple, head chef and your personal wellness guide." Her handshake lingered, fingers warm and slightly earth-stained from gardening. The contact sent electricity racing up my arm. "Apple?" I managed, trying not to stare at the way her lips curved. "My parents were food bloggers with a twisted sense of humor." She laughed, "But I've grown to love it. There's something poetic about nourishing people, don't you think?" She led me on a tour of the retreat. 10 luxury cabins scattered around a central lodge, all designed to blend seamlessly with the forest. The kitchen was Apple's domain, an open-air space where she created what she called cuisine that awakens all the senses. "We practice radical honesty here," Apple explained as we walked through herb gardens fragrant with lavender and rosemary, about our desires, our needs, our authentic selves. Many of our guests discover parts of themselves they never knew existed. The way she said desires made heat pool low in my belly. "What kind of discoveries?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Apple stopped beside a pergola heavy with grapevines, turning to face me fully. "Tell me, Eva, when was the last time you felt truly alive? Not just happy or content, but absolutely electric with being?" The honest answer was never, but I couldn't say that to someone I'd just met, even if her dark eyes seemed to see straight through me. "It's been a while," I admitted. "Then you're exactly where you need to be," she said, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from my face. Her touch was feather light, but it sent shockwaves through my entire system. "Tonight's dinner is special, a welcome feast. I'll be cooking for you personally." As she walked away, hips swaying hypnotically, I realized I was in serious trouble. I'd come here to heal from one woman, only to find myself immediately captivated by another. My cabin was perfect, all natural materials and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the forest. But as I unpacked, I couldn't stop thinking about Apple's fingers on my cheek, the way her voice dropped when she said desires, the promise in her eyes when she mentioned cooking for me personally. That evening couldn't come fast enough. Dinner was served on the main lodge's wraparound deck, strings of lights creating an intimate atmosphere under the stars. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a flowing dress that hugged my curves while maintaining an air of casual elegance. When Apple saw me, her eyes darkened with appreciation. "You look stunning," she murmured, leading me to a table set for 2 with candles and fresh flowers. The meal was a sensual symphony. Apple had prepared dishes designed to awaken every sense. Figs drizzled with honey, wine that tasted like sunshine, chocolate that melted on my tongue with shameless decadence. She sat across from me, watching my reactions with the intensity of a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. "Food is the most intimate act we can share with another person," she said, feeding me a strawberry with her fingers. "We're literally taking something into our bodies, letting it become part of us." When juice ran down my chin, she leaned across the table to catch it with her thumb, then brought it to her own lips. The gesture was so erotic I nearly moaned aloud. "Apple," I whispered, reaching for her hand. That's when the motorcycle roared up the mountain road. Apple's entire demeanor shifted, her eyes widening with what looked like panic mixed with excitement. The motorcycle's engine cut off, and I heard footsteps on the gravel path, the sound of expensive leather moving with predatory grace. Well, came a voice like aged whiskey and midnight secrets. Having dinner without me, darling? I turned to see a woman who could have stepped out of a fantasy, tall, with waves of midnight hair and the kind of bone structure that belonged on magazine covers. Her leather jacket hung open over a black tank top that showcased toned arms decorated with intricate tattoos. When she smiled, it was pure sin. "Sarah," Apple breathed, standing so quickly her chair nearly toppled. "You said you weren't coming until next week." "Plans changed," Sarah said, her gaze moving to me with predatory interest. "And who might this be?" "Eva Martinez," I said, standing to shake her hand. Her grip was firm, confident, and she held on longer than necessary while her eyes traveled appreciatively over my body. "Seraphina Viper," she replied, "but everyone calls me Sarah. And you, Eva Martinez, are even more beautiful than Apple described in her texts." Apple had been texting about me? The thought sent a thrill through me even as I wondered about the dynamics between these two women. "Sarah is one of our special guests," Apple explained, her voice tight with an emotion I couldn't identify. "She comes here when she needs to reconnect with nature." "Among other things," Sarah murmured, moving to stand behind Apple's chair. Her hands settled on Apple's shoulders, thumbs stroking the sensitive skin at the base of her neck. Apple's eyes fluttered closed at the touch, and jealousy hit me like a physical blow. "I hope you don't mind if I join you," Sarah continued, pulling up a third chair without waiting for an answer. "I'm starving, and Apple's cooking is legendary." The way she said starving made it clear she wasn't just talking about food. The rest of dinner was a masterclass in sexual tension. Sarah and Apple had the easy intimacy of lovers, their conversation full of inside jokes and loaded glances. But both women also seemed determined to include me, creating a triangle of attraction that had me squirming in my seat. When Sarah fed Apple a piece of chocolate, deliberately letting her tongue linger on Apple's fingers, I excused myself abruptly. "I should get some rest," I said, standing on legs that felt unsteady. "Thank you for dinner, Apple. It was enlightening." As I walked back to my cabin, I heard their voices behind me, too low to make out words but rich with intimacy. Whatever was between Apple and Sarah, it was complicated, passionate, and apparently ongoing. I'd come to Eden to find myself, but instead I'd stumbled into someone else's love story. The next morning, I woke to gentle knocking on my cabin door. Apple stood on my porch with a breakfast tray, looking gorgeous in yoga pants and a tank top that showed off her toned arms. "Peace offering," she said with a sheepish smile. "I'm sorry about last night. Sarah has a way of complicating things." She'd brought fresh fruit, homemade yogurt, and coffee that smelled like heaven. As we sat on my deck eating, the awkwardness from the night before melted away. "How long have you and Sarah been together?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Apple's laugh was complicated. "That's the million-dollar question. We've been something for about 2 years. She shows up when she needs grounding. We reconnect intensely for a few days or weeks, then she disappears back to her life in the city." "That sounds exhausting." "It is," Apple admitted. "But Sarah is like a force of nature. When she's here, everything feels more vivid, more alive. When she's gone..." She shrugged, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. "And now?" Apple looked directly at me, her gaze serious. "Now there's you, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since you arrived." Before I could respond, she leaned over and kissed me. Her lips were impossibly soft, warm from the morning sun, tasting of coffee and wild honey. The kiss started gentle, a question more than a demand. But when I responded by threading my fingers through her silken hair, it deepened into something that made my entire body come alive. Apple's tongue traced the seam of my lips, seeking entrance, and when I opened for her, she explored me with the same patience she showed her garden, thorough, reverent, intoxicating. Her hand cupped my face, thumb stroking my cheekbone as she kissed me like I was the most delicious thing she'd ever tasted. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard, foreheads pressed together in the golden morning light. Apple's eyes were dark with desire, her lips swollen from our kiss. "I've wanted to do that since the moment you stepped out of your car," she whispered against my mouth. "Eva," she whispered. "I know this is complicated. Very complicated," came Sarah's voice from the edge of the deck. We sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Sarah stood at the bottom of the steps, having appeared with her usual silent grace. She wore running clothes that showcased her athletic body, and her expression was unreadable. "Don't stop on my account," she said, climbing the steps with predatory elegance. "You two look beautiful together." The next hour was surreal. Instead of jealousy or anger, Sarah seemed genuinely delighted by the attraction between Apple and me. She settled onto the deck as if she belonged there, steering the conversation toward intimate topics with the skill of someone who'd navigated complex relationship dynamics before. "Have you ever been with two women at once?" Sarah asked me directly, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Sarah," Apple warned, but her voice lacked conviction. "What?" It's a legitimate question. Eva's exploring her authentic self, isn't she? And authenticity requires honesty about our desires. The way she said it made the question sound reasonable, even necessary. And the truth was, sitting between these two gorgeous women, feeling the electrical current that seemed to flow between all three of us, I was definitely having thoughts I'd never had before. "No," I said honestly. "I haven't." "But you're curious," Sarah stated rather than asked. I looked between them. Apple with her earth goddess beauty and nurturing energy, Sarah with her dangerous elegance and barely contained wildness. The attraction I felt for both of them was undeniable. "Yes," I whispered. Sarah's smile was triumphant. "Then perhaps it's time for your real education to begin." What happened next was a gradual seduction that lasted 3 days and changed everything I thought I knew about pleasure, love, and my own capacity for desire. It started with small moments. Sarah's hand on my back as she showed me motorcycle, maintenance. Apple feeding me tastes of her cooking with fingers that lingered against my lips. The three of us began moving as a unit, sharing meals, conversations, and increasingly intimate touches. On the second night, we found ourselves in Apple's private hot tub under the stars, the boundaries between friendship and something deeper dissolving like sugar in water. When Sarah kissed me while Apple's hands explored my body beneath the warm water, I finally understood what it meant to feel truly alive. The lovemaking that followed was a revelation. Apple was tender and giving, worshiping my body like it was sacred. Sarah was passionate and demanding, pushing me to heights of pleasure I didn't know existed. Together, they created a symphony of sensation that left me gasping and transformed. But paradise, as I should have remembered from Sunday school, never lasts. The cracks started showing on the 4th day. I noticed the way Apple's smile faltered when Sarah and I shared private jokes. I saw how Sarah's jaw tightened when Apple and I had quiet conversations about what would happen when my retreat ended. The easy flow between us became charged with unspoken tensions and competing claims. The explosion came during what should have been a perfect evening picnic in the apple orchard. We'd made love under the trees, our bodies intertwined on a blanket surrounded by fallen fruit. But as we lay in the aftermath, reality intruded. "So what happens now?" I asked, still floating in post-orgasmic bliss. "What do you mean?" Apple asked, though her voice carried a warning. "When my retreat ends next week, do I go back to San Francisco and pretend this never happened? Do we try to maintain some kind of long-distance relationship? All three of us?" The silence was deafening. "Eva," Sarah said carefully, "you know I don't do conventional relationships." "Of course you don't," Apple interrupted, sitting up abruptly. "God forbid you commit to anything beyond your next adrenaline fix." "And you want to what? Lock her in a tower?" Sarah shot back. "Keep her here as your personal pet." I watched in horror as years of unresolved tension erupted between them. Accusations flew like weapons. Apple calling Sarah selfish and emotionally unavailable, Sarah accusing Apple of being possessive and manipulative. Both of them talked about me like I was a prize to be won, rather than a person with my own agency. "Stop," I finally said, standing and wrapping myself in the abandoned blanket. "Just stop." They both turned to me, and I saw my own heartbreak reflected in their faces. "I came here broken," I continued, my voice shaking with emotion. "And for a few days you both made me feel whole. But this," I gestured between them, "this isn't love. This is possession and fear and the same toxic patterns you've been trapped in long before I arrived." I left them there among the fallen apples. Two beautiful women who couldn't find a way to love without destroying what they touched. 6 months later, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a jar of Apple's homemade preserves and a photo of Sarah on her motorcycle, taken somewhere impossibly beautiful and remote. The note was simple. "Thank you for showing us what we were afraid to see. We're learning." I keep the photo on my kitchen counter in my new apartment, a reminder that some loves are meant to transform us rather than last forever. The taste of those 3 perfect days in Eden lingers like the sweetest fruit, complicated, intense, and utterly unforgettable. These days, I'm dating someone new. Rachel is kind, stable, and completely devoted to building something real together. She's nothing like Apple's earth goddess sensuality or Sarah's dangerous magnetism, and that's exactly what I need. But sometimes late at night, I dream of hot tubs under starlight and the taste of forbidden fruit shared between 3 women who love too much and not wisely enough. Ready to explore your own garden of earthly delights? Subscribe to our newsletter for more stories that celebrate the beautiful complexity of women loving women in all its messy, passionate, transformative glory. Your next great love story is waiting.